Welcome back to another episode of Master Random Live. We are, 46 episodes, T-Ville? This is number 46?
This is 46.
Beautiful. Yes, and for today, we get to talk about medical marijuana. Holy cow.
Yeah.
I mean, it's been around for a long time, and in 2014, Guam became the first territory of the United States to legalize medical marijuana, and it was brought on by a vote. Everybody voted on it. They said yes. They spent 9 months drafting the rules, and it was the Casey Conception Compassionate Act, right? But before that, it was anyways, before we start getting into like the history and stuff, I want to introduce to you the person who is gonna take us on this little journey of medical marijuana information. And she represents Grassroots Guam. What did it remind me of? The Grow Guam for women?
Women Grow Guam.
Women Grow Guam. And her name is Andrea Pelicani. Welcome to the show, ma'am.
Thank you. I'm really happy to be here.
Well, anyway, so can you give us a little bit of background on how the medical marijuana initiative started? Where did it start? I know there's a failure with Bill 420, and that was kind of a funny name when it first came out. Bill 420. That's a little funky. But so can you give us a little background history on what medical marijuana is about? And also the group that formed this group formed during this push for medical marijuana, or is it something that was before?
We actually got together after it was passed. It's one thing to have the statute voted on by the people. It's an entirely different thing to build the foundation for a good regulatory program, which essentially it's building a brand new industry on Guam. So it has far-reaching implications that really need to be well thought out.
So, sorry. I thought there was more to that.
I was wondering if there was like a 5-second delay or something.
There's like a lag.
There's a delay with our internet.
We're actually, it's like a split second. It's a split second delay. It's really not that.
Yeah, it's pretty real time. But anyways, okay. Well, so who started Grow Guam or Women Grow Guam? I'm getting this all mixed up.
Women Grow Guam was actually it's a national group, and what they do is they promote women in the cannabis industry. And a group of women got together and brought a local chapter to Guam. And I've just recently been appointed, so I'm still just kind of like dabbing my toe in it and trying to figure out where we can take this group. But we definitely want to start focusing our efforts for Women Grow Guam on licensing and fair licensing, because we want women to take part in the industry.
So do you see it as a problem? Is that why this thing had to be started? Is that it might be a problem? It's going to be a male-driven economy with, I mean, not economy, but male-driven business. Is that why a group like this started?
Well, it can be. I mean, there are a lot of women groups in many different types of industries, but this is actually the first women-dominated multi-billion-dollar industry. I think personally, and I think a lot of other people do, that we think that women dominate this industry because we are natural caregivers in our communities and in our families. And so when it comes to giving ourselves and our families and our children alternatives to medicine, something that might be a little more healthy or something that you react better to as far, I mean, who knows with pharmaceuticals, right? I think we just tend to be more open and more compassionate. So women definitely, I think, have a really good foothold on this industry.
So I got a question. Are there any obstacles or issues that we're facing right now that you need to create an awareness for, or on the island, or just in general, actually. Are you guys experiencing? Are you ladies, excuse me, experiencing any obstacles or deterrents or constraints in your guys' mission?
Yeah, actually, the biggest obstacle, I mean, before you can even get to like, the next step, the
Mm-hmm.
first obstacle you have to fight really is just the stigma of the propaganda and the brainwashing that for decades and decades, we've been led to believe so many bad things about cannabis. But as you start to learn the history and start to see the research and the studies, you realize, wow, cannabis is not really that like a bad guy, like they've been telling us this whole time. And so, 0 people have died due to overdose from cannabis in the history of mankind. We're talking about back to hieroglyphics, right? We see cannabis leaves in ancient script. And so they've been using it for a long, long, long time, and nobody has yet to find anybody who has died from an lethal overdose of cannabis. So we're trying to change the stigma and the face of what people think about marijuana, which our first step is calling it cannabis, which is the right name for it, the correct name for it.
Right.
And just put a different face on what it is, because it's people have an idea in their heads. So that's the first thing that we have to fight.
Do you think that because Guam is so religiously backed, having a Catholic faith and everything like that, and traditional in a sense, that's what I'm trying to get. It's like, because Guam is so traditional, is there going to be a lot of pushback from older generations? Or because it seems like the younger generations are a little bit more open to it.
Liberal.
Right.
So yeah.
Right. You'd actually be pretty surprised.
Really?
I actually just went to speak to the Guam Council of Women, and they're all very receptive of it. If you hear, the average patient age for a woman is about early to mid 40s, and for a man, it's late 30s to early 40s. And so the older generation is actually really waiting for it. We're the patients. We're the ones
Wow.
with the, with the cancer and with the, all these things that take a toll on your body after the age of 40. And so we are the patients. So you'd actually be surprised. The acceptance of it. I mean, there's a UN study that they put out where Guam has an 18% consumption rate. That's a pretty high rate. We rank top 3, I believe, in the world per capita. And so I think there's a huge acceptance here. I think the difficulty is the politics of it.
Right. So it's more federal problems than it is local problems, right?
Well,
getting it accepted on the federal level, just as with other states. But because we're a territory and we don't really have that much say as a state would have, it's, I don't know. I just see.
Well, it creates a unique situation because it is federally illegal. So it's kind of the only industry that's legal in certain states, and obviously Guam now, but is illegal on the federal level. So there are challenges that are unique as far as, really the number one thing that people think about is transport. So you can't import or export any cannabis goods. Hemp is also an entirely different issue. And so it is kind of unique in that way. But locally, we do have as many problems on the regulatory side. I think part of the problem is because it's a brand new industry, finding the right people to consult with and advise is a big deal. We need people with some experience in the industry, and we need to do a lot of research and figure out what's worked and what's not worked in different places, and how we can put together a program that's going to work specifically for us.
Right.
Not necessarily Arizona.
Are there any apparent differences between Guam being a territory and, say, California or Colorado legalizing marijuana or medical marijuana? Are there any differences in what Guam has to follow Are the channels different, or is it just one channel? If you want to legalize medical marijuana, or you want to legalize marijuana recreationally, do territories have to follow a different streamline than what states have to follow?
No, I mean, this was a referendum and it was voted for by the people. And in the statute, it states that public health is in charge of putting the program together. And that's pretty much, it's actually easier than the states, because the states have to deal with different municipalities and different cities and city ordinances and things like that. So, you may have a different regulatory body and a different things that they have to contend with, from San Francisco to Denver to, Seattle. So everybody's got their own unique, statutes that are already existing in where they live. So I think each case is unique.
So what is Guam's biggest challenge in I guess creating the draft rules for medical marijuana to
succeed in
succeed in representing the people and what they want with this initiative? And then also, what is the biggest challenge of us just legalizing it across the board?
I think our challenge is political. I do. There's
political on the local level, or political on the federal
political
level?
On the local level. I mean, there's nothing we could do about what's going on on the federal level, whether they deschedule or reschedule or whatnot. That's an entirely different issue. But on the political level, locally, I mean, you have the regulatory bodies that may be involved. So, you have the governor's office, and then you have public health, and then you have Department of Agriculture, and then you have the medical board, and then you have the legislature, and then we now have the Attorney General's office who's reviewed the rules. And so there's a lot of that in the mix. But I think our biggest challenge is to identify the size of the market, because right now it is in the statute.
A black market.
Right, exactly. People want to pretend that it doesn't exist, but it does. And for me, the way I view it and the way we view it as Grassroots Guam is that the industry does already exist. Now, how do we get it so that it's safe for the community? Because it's there already. They're not going away. But we want to make sure that they are invited to participate in a regulated, because that could completely ruin the whole program. Because right now they control. For sure. Yeah, they control everything. And so if we don't set up a program that's ready to grow and ready to thrive, the black market will continue to control and dominate cannabis on the market. And that's
right. Even if it's like, even if they do the rules, right? Is that what you're saying? They do the rules, and the black market can still overpower the possible economic benefits of the legalized side, right? The green market.
Right. Market. That's exactly what can happen. One, if the market size is not big enough. Currently, we have a list of 10 conditions that qualify you for the program. With these 10 conditions, it's roughly under 4,000 people. But the black market is currently what we estimate to be about 28 to 30,000. The consumption rate is about 30,000 people. We need to convert all those 30,000 people into the regulated market. So all 30,000 people need to become patients in order for this program to get off the ground. Now, if you're looking at 4,000 patients eligible, and you're talking about a 10 to 20% participation rate, you're really only talking about a few hundred people. And I think what's going to happen, if we don't fix that, is the black market still going to service 18% of the population,
right?
And that's untested, stuff that hasn't been in the lab, stuff that may have pesticides. We have no idea, and those are all the things that we want to get rid of. So,
yeah, right.
So it has it seems that it has a really big, it's political, but it sounds like it also has a real big economical kind of obstacle that that we're going through, or that's stopping this whole thing. Do you want to tell us a little? Go ahead.
If we don't do it right the first time, it's gonna fuck up everything across the board, and down the line.
Yeah.
And
If we stop fighting, right? Or if
we're gonna keep
if,
having to go back and amend. We're gonna be on Amendment 20 by the time we get
Right.
it right, and
This to me,
that's what we need to prevent, right?
right. The biggest problem would be the black market taking control over the regulated market, because that's the kind of thing that you can't put back in the can. As far as like amending, the program's gonna evolve over the years, even after they launch it, because they'll start to identify problems, and they'll start to say, okay, well, maybe we can lax on this because it's, it was really unnecessary, and those things will happen along the way. But the last thing that you want to do is to allow something that you cannot control or regulate to regulate the whole entire industry, which is the black market.
Right.
So, once again, we think that there should be open and fair licensing. Everybody should have an opportunity if you complete the requirements or qualifications to get a license to grow, manufacture, sell, transport, give caregiving services. Everybody should have the opportunity to do so in order for the industry to flourish. And once again, we support and encourage women to participate.
So it's more like a California-based medical marijuana system, huh? Than
No,
that's what we're trying to. That's what we're trying to, because I know the Guam rules were written based off the Arizona regulations. Is that correct?
Correct.
And then, but it seems like what you were just talking about, it's more like, okay, we want what California does. You can go in, anybody can go in, and as long as a licensed doctor says, I can prescribe you marijuana, then you can go to any dispensary that somebody decided, okay, I don't need you need a license, but what am I trying to say?
Well, California is currently unregulated. I mean, the governor did sign a bill to regulate the medical market, because they've been unable to push a tax and regulate program over there. But no, I don't think that's the ideal model. What's happened there is exactly what I am saying needs to not happen here. Which
I see.
Yeah, which is the gray market, gray/black illicit market, kind of running amok. And they can't fix it.
Kind of just everybody opening up a dispensary.
Right. We are
growing.
for sensible regulations. We're not looking to be unregulated. We just are hoping for sensible regulations, so the people have safe access to cannabis. But they shouldn't need to stand in a line at public health or have to meet all these qualifications just to get cannabis. I mean, if they're going to make it completely difficult, they're just going to walk down the street and get it on the illicit market, because it's going to be a whole lot easier. And that's the point that we're trying to make.
Right. So how does this affect like pricing?
Right. That's a good question. And I think that would depend on the cost of doing business, which would start with your licensing and your business model. But at first, there's going to be a sort of pricing war between the regulated market and the illicit market. And obviously, if the regulated market has a lot of compliance measures, temperature controls, and things that cost a lot of money, including licensing, which should not be at $35,000, but we think that they're going to change that. But it needs to be reasonable, because what's going to happen is the illicit market will start to drop their prices, and if you're in compliance, you're not going to be able to match that.
So we're basically trying to create a competitive market against the black market.
Exactly. That's exactly what we're trying to say. We're trying to move the industry from an illicit, unregulated one into a regulated one. That we want sensible regulations.
Right. I mean, just how like Colorado did. So why not just go straight to legalize across the board? what's the
Well,
holdback?
well, support for one. If you can launch a good medical program, which is a lot harder than launching an adult use program, then you can handle an adult use program. But part of the issue too is the medical market does not go away. That is the foundation and anchor of cannabis, of the cannabis industry, and there is a tax issue. Patients shouldn't have to pay tax for medicine. And so if you go tax and regulate all the way, if I'm a patient and I have diabetes and I should be able to get it as medicine, I shouldn't be paying a 10 to 15% taxation on my medicines.
But you're still getting it at a reasonable price compared to the black market, and
I shouldn't have to pay tax for medicine. Nobody should have to pay tax for medicine. So it's still 15%. When you spent your life savings for chemo and radiation, that 15% you're spending for that pound of cannabis to make your Rick Simpson oil is going to be a lot of money, and you shouldn't be paying for that as a patient. That the medical program should not go away.
Did you guys see there's a article that came out on Fortune just today, I think, and it says the DEA just approved the way to smoke marijuana legally for the first time. And so
I'm sorry, could you say that again?
The DEA just approved, this is from Fortune magazine on their website, right. And the DEA just approved the way to smoke marijuana legally for the first time. So basically they greenlit a clinical trial of smoking marijuana to treat PTSD in American military veterans. And so just from seeing that, is the battle also going towards aiding military veterans here on Guam? Because, you know, we have a very high per capita of people who join the military, go to war, come back with problems, so to speak. Is the effort and the fight also kind of just like how come they're not in the spotlight, kind of?
Right. That's always going to be a federal issue, even though it would be legal locally, because they have military benefits and things tied into their health care. And so if cannabis is not allowed for veterans, then they'll lose their federal benefits and their medical care by accessing it. So that's a completely different issue, really. Locally, they would be allowed to, they could participate in the program, but then they run the risk of losing.
But they're not at the forefront of the initiative.
Like I said, that is a federal issue.
Oh, okay. Well, I guess I just brought that up because, you know, like the highest drug enforcement agency, you know, has approved this, I guess.
Yeah, what they did was they approved the study.
Treatment. Yeah, so I guess, I don't know.
Yeah, they approved it. I think what they did was they approved for it to be studied because a lot of the evidence with cannabis, because it's been illegal for so long, and they've only allowed very few testing, which was mainly testing to prove that it's bad. So all the research and stuff to prove that it's good is kind of a little bit newer, and everybody knows anecdotally that cannabis helps people with PTSD, and it's not just military. It's people who've been in car wrecks or who have lost a loved one.
Trauma victims.
Yeah, any sort of trauma. But they already know it works, and whether you're using it or not, a lot of people who do have PTSD are finding a lot of benefit with cannabis, but the research is just not there to back it up yet. So really, it's just a formality.
Well, now they allowed it to be tested. Like now they're saying, okay, now we can test and doing this. I'm just wondering how that'll affect the drive and the push. Like, okay, you know, now military veterans can possibly smoke marijuana to treat their PTSD and still serve in the military.
Right.
Then
that would be fantastic.
I
think the NFL actually should put a couple $billion into research because cannabis is shown to repair brain trauma. And now I don't know if you pay attention to football, but they basically admitted, okay, CTE does exist and it's caused by football and head injury. And so I don't know what the big deal is. The NFL has a ton of money. They should put, I don't know, 10, 15, 20 million to study cannabis effects on brain trauma. A lot of former players do advocate for cannabis consumption. It helps them with their pain and whatnot. So, I think the NFL should put, I don't know, 10, 15 mil. That'd be kind of cool.
10,
Somebody call
15
Roger
like.
Goodell and let him know. I had a really fantastic idea, so we're buddies.
Well, too bad.
By the way, this is my Broncos shirt because I'm still celebrating Super Bowl 50.
I thought you were wearing it because of Colorado. That was my initial thought.
Right. When I walked in, somebody said, "Hey, you're wearing a Denver shirt," and I'm like, "Yeah, I'm a fan." So I didn't put two and two together till they thought something else.
Yeah. But anyways, Beleni, got anything for Andrea?
Talking about the NFL and talking about just the stigma. I want to go back to that stigma that you talked about calling it by the right name, which is cannabis. And to me, what kind of gets to my mind is I believe that is correct. It's starting at the grassroots and at everyday conversations to change the focus from marijuana, quote, marijuana, and start to call it by its proper name as cannabis. It's almost like you kind of wipe a clean slate. Because
but
thinking
kind of to me, it's like, and people are gonna call it whatever they call it. It's almost like the Chamorro Guamanian thing. It's like, we're trying to be called Guamanians, but a lot of Chamorros don't want to be. I don't want to be called Guamanian. Like, fuck that. That's just what it seems like to me. It kind of just seems like that. You want to push to be called cannabis, but people are still gonna call it weed, marijuana, whatever Mary Jane.
So do you think that would be a waste of time, even just trying to change that thinking? Because I feel like it'll come with it's like fresh. It's like a new. It's like if you are cannabis, like what is that? Well, and you can start talking about the medical
it's just rebranding. Then you're just rebranding.
Yeah, it's rebranding. That's what everything.
Boy, rebranding is the theme for the day. But yeah, essentially, it's rebranding.
It's like fresh. It's like it's an opportunity to say like, what is cannabis? Well, cannabis.
Right.
It's like cannabis. It's you get a chance to educate, to throw in your education instead of being like. This is at the grassroots.
Don't smoke
right? At this
weed.
Level.
Smoke this cannabis.
Hey, they don't need to. They don't need to. Think about it. It's an opportunity at the most basic conversational level to not really talk about, marijuana, weed,
right.
The reefer, like all the old stuff if you stay using old language, at least that's my opinion. If you stay talking about old language, you're gonna have the old thinking about it. The first thing that comes to your mind is reefer. All those old reefer madness commercials that you've seen. It's bad, back in the 1950s or 30s. They're old black and white.
Right? Don't you remember like the egg? Right? This is your brain. Yeah, we all remember that.
This is your brain on drugs.
Right now,
melted on the couch, but.
Yeah, it starts falling off. And they called it marijuana. They like you're taught that don't smoke marijuana, but it's the same thing, man. It's the same, it's the same exact thing. But some people are not smart enough to catch on it. And hey, if they're not, then that's one person you've just converted from thinking it of as marijuana or the bad marijuana. That's that one person. Oh, it's cannabis, and then later on he'll find out. Oh, dude, that's just weed. Like, what? No, it's cannabis, bro. That's good stuff for you. It's medically good for you. And then they're gonna have this conversation. Oh, you never knew that it was bad? Well, no, dude. Why is that stuff bad? It's good. I've heard all good stuff about it first. That is,
you know what? That marijuana, that's bad shit, man. I don't need to deal with that. Give me some of that cannabis.
the cannabis guy's gonna be like, dude, what are you talking about? It's good for you, you know, and it almost be it I think at the most basic level, it'll help change the
Right.
perception of it. That's just how I feel. What do you guys
For
think?
me, I mean, I go and I speak to a lot of people, and so you know, I have to go in there and fight the stigma. You know, I mean, it's hard when you have strain names like train wreck and green crack and things like that. It's like we're hurting ourselves, right? We're hurting ourselves. And then so I got to put on a coat and go and talk to like 50, 60, 70-year-olds and say, cannabis is fantastic. So if, you know, and then you talk about, and this strain, OG train wreck, you know, I mean, it just kind of, it makes it a little bit difficult to, you know, to kind of push medical advocacy when I'm promoting things that are called green crack and things like that. So that's
well,
hard.
I mean, stuff like cookies, maybe, you know, like
naming
Girl Scout cookies. Like, oh, Girl Scout cookies.
Right. Right.
You gotta name it stuff they can't pronounce, like hefalickalikum or something. I mean, I don't know. Like, so,
that's
like,
a local
that?
strain.
I mean,
it's a local strain.
Yeah, you know,
right.
like the doctor prescribes you the pills or whatever, and it's this name you can't even pronounce. I mean, maybe, and people
which is the generic version of something that's really bad for you.
Right. Sure. It's called like whatever the easy name is.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I guess on the quality level and making it being good enough to be medically distributed, does it come from here? Are we trying to make it come from here? Or are we trying to import it secretly?
Next question.
Next question. We're pleading the fifth. I'm just joking. Generally, you know, it's like
nothing can be imported.
Yeah.
And so it's kind of this catch-22.
Right. And
so there really is no answer to that question. There really is no answer to that question.
Of course, there's an answer. To be PC, there's no answer. But
there is no answer to that question.
I think there's an answer. Like, it has to come from here. You know, there's no choice. People have to grow here, even if we have farms here. That's how I see it. It's like we're not gonna.
It has to. Yeah. I mean, it has to come from here. I mean, nothing can be brought in, but you know,
unless marijuana is descheduled on the federal level to from a Schedule 1 to a Schedule 4. Maybe we'll be able to bring in something from California to support medically, but I don't see any research centers here to where they're testing the potency of marijuana. You know, you have that all over the Western Hemisphere. I mean, the West Coast of the United States. But here, how do we gain that credibility of that our marijuana is medically sound?
Yeah, that would be a diagnostics issue, and we have a few, I think, qualified diagnostic labs here. If they want to get into the cannabis industry or not is a completely different question.
Right.
But once again, it goes back to the size of the market, right? So we talked about less than 4,000 patients on the market. No lab would be interested to come here and invest, you know, over $100,000 on diagnostic equipment and set up shop here for something that only has a reach of close to 4,000 people. Now we move up to the 18% consumption rate and start talking 28 to 30,000 people. Then you might get a couple key people that might come in and say, you know what, they also have a tourism business there. It might be worth it to set up shop. That's when everything changes. And that's when we talk about setting up a really good industry. It starts with the size of the market.
Right. You know, I was having a discussion with somebody, a few people actually, and we were talking about how marijuana can possibly be the ticket to self-determination. You know, like as oddly as that fucking sounds, like
dude, that must have been from our boys.
Like marijuana can possibly.
Yeah,
help us sustain ourselves economically along with agriculture, and it can support it can increase tourism because people will be like, Guam has the best marijuana in the Pacific, you know.
Yeah.
So on my way to Asia, I can stop by Guam and go to this marijuana festival or go to the dispensaries there and try high grade marijuana, and then go to Asia where you can basically get beheaded for having it.
Right. Yeah. I mean, it's definitely something that needs to be looked into. If you go with an adult use, a tax and regulate program, how will this affect tourism and the economy? It
I think
could
it
be
has a
potentially
positive.
I
huge.
think it's
Yeah, it could be
positive too. I think
crazily
it's way
huge.
positive.
Like,
I mean,
what do you think, Tivo? You as soon as I said it, you started laughing, and so I.
because I mean, like, think about it economically. I think the problem, not the problem, but I mean, the federal government or any governments in general, they like what they can tax. That's the bottom line. That's how they make their revenues, right? So
Except
the thing
the
is,
rich.
you grow right, you grow this thing. It's not something that and it doesn't take much to grow. I mean, it really doesn't. It takes sunlight, water, some fertilizer, some soil, right? And the thing is, how they probably can't figure out how the heck they're gonna regulate this thing for the mom and pops who are selling it at the on the black market, which we talked about earlier. But when you have the economics involved, and you let them, you let them in, and you let them in on what you're doing, how you're doing it, and you, as grassroots, as the everyday people, you educate the government and you work with them. I think it'll be a little bit more easier for them to come in and say that it's okay if you let them have some part of that revenue that you're making. I think that's the biggest issue, is the taxes on this. How they don't know how to tax it, because it can just grow anywhere, and that there's already a black market. But at the same time, it's like, if the people who are growing this stuff is willing to let the government in on it, I feel like that would have such an easier gateway to kind of making it a positive, successful what do you call it, when it turns into positive for everyone. I can't get my words, but I think that Guam could be a hub. We're in the middle of the Pacific. It could be a hub for all the other Pacific islands to come to our island. We are one of the most developed islands here. We have the infrastructure to have people to start coming over and doing research on this, on medical marijuana and marijuana in general. And all it takes is just for us to be the first. No one wants to be the first, but once everyone else catches on, it's like everyone wants to start doing it, and it's too late.
Right. I'm down to be the first. Like, I'm trying to talk to everybody who will listen to me. Like, will you listen to me? Because I really believe in this, and I really believe in the program. And I've been in marketing and advertising for over 15 years. And so, I just kind of have that business sense about it. Right. As well as I'm a woman, and my father passed away from cancer. And if I'd have known at that time what I know now, who knows? I mean, the federal government just admitted that cannabis kills cancer cells. It shrinks tumors. So if they're just admitting that now, what people have known for decades, but we can't prove it. It's all anecdotal. And it's a personal thing for people who have basically been sent home to die. Basically, they're given a life sentence. You have cancer, or you're not going to live for 9 months, and they go on an Rick Simpson oil, a program with Rick Simpson oil, and then all of a sudden, wow, what happened? My tumor shrank, and I'm now operable. So you can now remove that tumor from me. It's giving people hope. Do we know exactly why it's happening? No, we don't. The science needs to catch up, but
is the science not here, or the science hasn't been done at all? I feel like the science already been done, but the science isn't here yet.
No, the science has not been done, because in order for studies to be done, it had to be approved by 3 federal departments, which was, I think it's the Department of Justice, the DEA, and there's another, it has to go through a 3-prong approval process, which could take forever. and nobody was allowing a study. Nobody in the federal government was allowing a study unless it was something to prove that cannabis was bad. So, you know, who's leading the world in research is Israel. I mean, they discovered THC. So, you know, the U.S. is far behind, but, you know, just like any capitalistic country, we're now kind of like moving ahead. But it takes the cooperation of the federal government to finally admit what they've been misleading the people about. You know, they also own a patent on research that shows cannabis to be beneficial for head trauma, going back to the NFL thing. The federal government owns that patent, but they also schedule it as a Schedule 1, which says there is no medical benefit. So that alone should be enough for people to go, then why? And we want people at least to ask questions. It's not for everybody, but ask the questions and get the knowledge that you need to decide if it's for you or not for you. And that's what we don't want. You know, we're not saying cannabis is for everybody, but we should say that everybody should have an opportunity to try it for their you know, their ailments or their symptoms.
Right. Does Guam's regulations, current write-up of the rules and regulations give that opportunity?
We don't know.
Or is it very narrow?
Well, the first draft, I mean, they've said they've made some changes from the first draft. We haven't seen it. We don't know when they're going to submit it. Once they send it to the legislature and it gets stamped, then it becomes a public document. So we're just waiting for that. Unfortunately, we'll only have like 10 days or something from that point to read this document and you know, pick it apart and be able to advise and consult what we like and what we don't like about the program.
Right. I think it'll streamline it. I think it'll streamline it more if they just have advocacy groups such as you guys' group to join in on the writing of the rules and regulations.
We asked. We've gone to the forums. We asked where was the AG in the process, and it wasn't until they submitted the first draft before the deadline where, I mean, it took that long to bring the AG's office in. I don't know why, but I asked at a UOG forum why there was no legal consult. Where's Chamber of Commerce in on this? You know, there's a board of doctors, a group of doctors, and they're pretty much, that's all of, you know, I'm like, where are the patients? Where are the patients involved? I mean, the patients should be involved, and this is the program for them.
You know, I do you think it goes back to where we started in the beginning on talking about the culture on Guam and the conservative, you know, they don't want to be
traditional values.
These traditional values. They don't want to be seen.
You're totally right, dude.
know.
You're totally right.
You know,
There are a lot of people who are afraid to come out as supporters because of what other people. Hey, did you know? See, so and so is they smoke that marijuana. They're trying to call it cannabis. You know?
You know, it's like, and they're trying to just, you know, change people's minds, and they think that, you know, it's good for them. But I mean, those are always gonna be haters, bro. And that's what I think. They're always gonna be haters, but eventually they're gonna grow old and they're gonna need the cannabis.
But you're totally right. What you're saying, Tivo, you're totally right. What you're saying is that, you know, people are afraid to come out. You know, there's not enough people coming out. You know, it's like, okay, well, Andrea's doing it, so we'll just let her do it, and whatever happens, happens.
So, do you guys seek any advice from the I don't know, the LGBT community on how they are fighting their wars? Because it's kind of similar. It's a kind of a similar concept. That you know, to come out. And then you come out as if you know, same thing. How do they fight it? It's the same thing. It's did you know so and so is this and that, and you know, especially on Guam, it's a, you know, it's almost, I feel it's the exact same thing. It's just your sexual orientation, which, you know, that it's winning over whether you like it or not across everywhere. It's
an uphill battle. It's an uphill battle fighting old ways of thinking and stereotypes and prejudices. And you're right about, you know, us having to do that as well. But like I said, you'd be surprised. Senator Barnes was on the radio a few weeks ago, and there was a caller in, and she was asking, well, when is the program going to launch? And this was a 70-year-old patient who was waiting for her cannabis. So, you'd be surprised the support to us. Where we find the most pushback is the regulatory and political arena the males. Yeah, I said it.
So that's good. Hey, the
men. It's the men.
Why is that? Why is that?
Yeah, why do you think?
I'm
curious.
I don't know. I mean, if I go and talk to Senator Barnes or former Senator Eileen Yamashita, any woman, they'll sit down and start talking about medical, whatever, and stuff that they've learned from the States or stuff that they've read. Soon as you meet with the man, a bureaucrat in particular, they have this like hard stance on a lot of things. And, I don't know. I think it's old societal values, really, where the man is there to protect the home and the woman's there. I really think that's what it is. That might be dumbing it down a little bit, but it really is true. I have the most pushback from men.
Is that both political and non-political?
Mainly political.
Okay.
Yeah, well, yeah. I mean, I don't know. From people that talk to me about it are obviously open, because I kind of give them an open platform to say whatever they want, because there's nothing wrong with it. I want you to feel comfortable to talk to me about it. So the men that I do talk to are really down to talk about it. It's when you walk into an office and you want to, or you're trying to make an appointment to talk to somebody about the economy and how cannabis can affect the economy or whatever. They just don't want to take your calls. They don't want to take your appointments. I'm like, okay, we move on, right? You keep chipping and you keep chipping until somebody wants to talk to you. And thank goodness for outlets like you guys, that are welcoming me, and we're happy to be here. But if it wasn't for groups like you and the people that do talk to us, we wouldn't be able to spread education and awareness out there, which is, again, going back to fighting the stigma.
Right. And I think that goes for a lot of different things too. It's just, as long as we're educated and aware of it, there should be no problem with it. I don't see a problem with educating and making people aware. And
right.
there's a lot of systems that kind of just be like, all right, we shouldn't say this, we shouldn't say that. It's
right.
Kind of just say it. Someone has to say it.
Right. Someone has to say it. And hopefully, I've been trying to say it as much as I can. Cannabis has killed 0 people in all of recorded history due to overdose. Okay, so let's walk backward from there. Where are the risks? What are the risks? Let's weigh them out.
Getting caught is the risk, I think, right now.
We're making criminals out of people that really shouldn't be criminals. That's a whole other problem. But
right now there's about 150 some officials and that are supporting that the United Nations stop fighting the war on drugs, which is a whole nother issue in itself. But it kind of relates to this, that it may not be so far away that the people are listening, that they are listening. They may not be listening on our island as much as the rest of the world, but they are listening out there on the effects of all this. And I feel like Guam, we're kind of like 5 years behind everybody else in that sense. And and when it finally gets to Guam, and I think, I wish we were the pioneers. I wish we would have an easier way to accept change. I wish that it would be we can view and be open to these types of things, because right now we're at that 5-year, I think it's about a 5-year lag. I mean, with songs, with social culture, with this type of things. And, why do we have to be 5 years behind? Why don't we find something that we can be the forefront of it and invest in it that way? And maybe people will start to look at us more and take us a little bit more seriously in terms of social and political, and as well as this medical, in the medical world. That's the kind of troubles that I kind of have, thinking about all the time, is like, I want us to be the pioneers of these types of issues that are going to help people. We're not trying to hurt anyone or do anything like that. We're trying to help people. And I feel like, I call out our people to take a listen to Grassroots Guams, to take a listen to anybody who's willing to educate you on this medicinal marijuana, but I want to call it medicinal cannabis. We're going to start calling it cannabis from now on. At least when I talk about it to people, I want to call it cannabis.
There's your supporter. There's your supporter, Andrew.
I call out to Guam to, start using the word cannabis, start educating yourself on medical cannabis and how it, can help you. You won't know what the benefits are till one of your loved ones or yourself is in that position, and they, have the unfortunate series of events happen to them, and they're sitting in the bed and they don't want any of the older the pills or whatever the doctors traditionally prescribing them. They want something natural, and it's like going to the Cirujano.
You take pills, and then you take pills to counter the side effects from those pills. Right. And trust me, when my dad had cancer, he had a bag full of meds, and like everything made him feel a certain way. And then he got more meds on top of that to counteract those things. I mean, that's just, it's unnecessary. And I don't even know how much that played into a factor of why he died, other than just the cancer. I think when he went into hospice, they told me that most people don't die from cancer. They actually die from starvation. So, I mean, if I'd have known that cannabis was shrinking tumors at the time, nobody knows. It's just, once again, going back to cannabis and marijuana. You talk marijuana, it's like, because it's going to give you the munchies and you're going to get hungry, and, which is all good, because if you can find a way, right. If you can find a way to hold down your sustenance when you're nauseous, or if you can find a way to actually get 6 to 8 hours sleep, all those things are really important. But what's also really important? When you've had a long work week, Monday to Friday, and you come home Friday, do you pop open that bottle of wine? Because
hell yeah,
3,000 people die a year from that alcohol, and that's direct blood alcohol poisoning. I'm going to go back to 0 people die from cannabis. So why not go home after a long work week, Monday to Friday, and just rip a bong
or take a dab?
I'm just saying. Right?
You got no objection. Yeah, you got no objections here.
Yeah, I agree with, to each his own. For me, is to each his own, and it's especially great if, I've never, you don't, smoke cannabis and then want to go and drive. I mean, you probably only drive if you really have to, but otherwise
you go get chips.
Yeah, you go get chips and you don't hurt nobody. You know what I mean? Unless you got your chips, then you share. They probably share.
Well, I might fight over chips. I might fight over the chip.
He goes, yeah, can't find your car. Yeah. Bro, you didn't even drive there.
Or you're waiting for a blinking red light to turn green, right?
Right. But stress, anxiety, depression, all of those things should be on the list. They really should. And I don't know, but I don't particularly care for wine. It makes me feel ill. It dehydrates me. You don't get any of those side effects with cannabis. You just don't. And so you feel fine.
Okay, so like if you're trying to change we keep going back to this marijuana cannabis thing, but you just mentioned being stoned. Do you think saying somebody is stoned or high has a negative connotation to the drive for marijuana, or the
initiative? If I could tell you how hard I laughed when my dad had to take Oxy, and he was so loopy. I mean, how is that any better? You could go and get a prescription for Oxy like that. Right. everything, all that stuff makes you loopy and stoned and whatever. But one of them kills you and one of them doesn't.
Right.
I mean,
Right.
you know, I mean, it's a fact.
I really feel that the hasn't killed anyone fact is probably the best counter argument for anything that anybody's gonna say when you talk about the drugs. I really feel that's just a mouth shutter, you know, that puts a zipper on their mouth, like, because it's true. Like, you've never heard anyone you've never heard anything crazy like that, not directly linked to them being medicated by cannabis.
Right.
So
You
I think
can't
we can say,
overdose.
let's say,
They
I don't
say,
want, yeah.
they say something like it takes, like, I don't know, 5 pounds or something like that to die, but that's probably mainly from like carbon monoxide or something. And you have to
Right.
like smoke that much in like 15 minutes, like, which is physically impossible. So, you
Right,
know,
you
I mean, it's just not going to happen. It's not going to happen. It doesn't,
I feel like you
your
eventually
body,
fall asleep before
right.
that.
Your body it actually produces cannabinoids naturally. So everything that you're consuming in cannabis is already being produced in your body. So you're just like enhancing it. It's like taking vitamins.
It's almost
like that.
it's almost like DMT. DMT is dimethyltryptamine is a naturally occurring substance in your body, and your brain releases DMT when you enter REM, and it allows you to dream. And you can find DMT in stuff such as blades of grass, fucking any organism pretty much. And it's kind of like that, you know, it's naturally occurring. But don't do DMT. Not that I've tried it. I've watched stuff on it. It's like, damn, do you really want to be in a dreamlike state, you know, being awake? Yeah, and people do that for fun.
I do that at work sometimes. I do that at work sometimes.
I think that accounts for like 90% of the working population. Are there any other questions that you guys wanted to ask? Or well, Velena, you mentioned something about Guam being in a 5-year lag. You know, like we seem like we're behind. And what I wanted to know is, why didn't the initiative start a long time, 10 years ago? You know, where was the push 10 years ago when California was doing it, when Washington was doing it? Why did it take until 2014 or 2012 for people to be like, all right, let's push for medical marijuana? You know?
I think acceptance. And, you know, to be able to put something out in a referendum and a majority of the people vote for it. You know, you guys, you know, have asked, we're mainly Catholic or whatever. That just kind of neglects the fact that majority, you know, voted for this thing. So I think the acceptance is here.
Do you think there was an educated vote on it? Or was it people would be like, oh, legalize marijuana? Hell yeah.
Well, I'm sure there was some of that. But, you know, I mean, talking about statute, and actually going through a bill and breaking it down and figuring out what the repercussions are, it's not always beneficial, because you need a jumping off point somehow. And there are things that still need to be fixed, like the list of conditions that's on the statute. I think we need to get rid of that. But the people voted on it, and that's where we are now. Everything else can be changed.
How educated now are we from 4 years ago?
You know, I think we still have a ways to go. I think we still have a ways to go. You know, even if you follow, you know, what happens in different states and what's happening stateside, they're still learning and making mistakes. I mean, Washington State, when they launched their adult use program, they overtaxed. And so essentially, in order to stay in business for a year, you had to lose money every day, because they were taxing something ridiculous, like 20-some%. You know, and it was crazy. And then so we did this wrong because the black market's stronger, and everybody's just going back to the medical facility because going back to no taxation, right? So they ended up shutting down all their dispensaries to merge the programs together. So being 5 to 10 years behind is actually not so much a bad thing in this situation, because you're seeing what works and what doesn't work.
So we're basically taking the little brother and little sister role. We're seeing the mistakes our big brothers are making or big sisters are making, and we're going to learn from those mistakes so that we don't make any mistakes ourselves.
Well, you could call it a big brother, little brother role if you want to, but I'd like to call it, like the iPhone 6S versus.
Oh, let's not get into iPhone conversation. And me and this guy
But
get into
you know what
it
I'm saying,
all
right?
the
And then,
time.
okay,
Right.
or OS 10 point, whatever, la 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 la, leopard, cheetah, whatever,
Yeah.
jaguar, whatever they want to call mountain lion.
All right.
So you've got to make improvements along the way, and so I don't see it as really a bad thing at this point.
So-
I'd rather do it right.
So we're more trying to be pioneers for our region then?
That would be awesome, don't you think?
Yeah.
But I think it's going to take a little more than looking at one state, Arizona, and kind of like, okay, let's do what they did.
Right.
I think we have to look at what every state's doing and what every state did wrong.
And yeah, I feel like you hit a good point. Why do we have to copy? I mean, we can copy and take some stuff from them, but we don't have to. I mean, we don't have to do exactly everything that they're doing and duplicate it because, I mean, if we study it from afar, you can kind of get some information or some insight on what not to do, I guess. And I think Guam should just take the leap. And what do you think if today, it was much more easier and they developed the regulations and everything, what do you think what would be the best environment on Guam? Like, what do you see in terms of regulations? What is heaven for medicinal cannabis on Guam? Like, what would be the easiest procedure to get your hands on medical cannabis? Like, if it went the way that you foresee it to be, or that you want it to be, that you're fighting for.
In a perfect world, I guess he's saying.
What would be the perfect world, right?
Right. And to me, ideally,
Thanks,
you go to a doctor and your doctor says, hey, cannabis might be beneficial for your condition. He would write a recommendation. Mind you, it's not a prescription as long as it's still federally illegal.
Right.
It's just saying you have a condition and cannabis would benefit you. And you can participate in the program. You literally take that piece of paper just like you would a quote unquote prescription, and you would take it to a dispensary and say, hey, I've got migraines. What can I take?
Right.
And so that's ideally, you wouldn't have to get a card or the scarlet letter C, the scarlet C on your chest because you're
Right.
participating in a cannabis program. It's really that information should be between you and your doctor.
Right. It should stay privileged, just like every other a patient doctor information or records are nowadays. That's how it is.
Right. I don't have to go and register to pick up my prescription of Oxy. So, it's pretty easy to get. I walk into the pharmacy, I fill out the paperwork, I register, and I put my name down and I pick up my Oxy and I walk out. That's pretty amazing considering Oxy is highly addictive and it kills a lot of people.
Yeah,
So-
it's almost like heroin. I think it's like one
It
molecule
is.
away from heroin. Yeah.
It is. And when you become addicted to Oxy, you basically go on the methadone program or,
Right.
something similar to that. So, and people don't realize that. But to me, Oxy's not cool. I don't like it at all. I barely like to take.
Yo, man, want to take a hit of my Oxy here? Nah, but I wanted to know what's the support from the medical community, from doctors? How many doctors will be willing to be that cannabis is going to be the first thing they prescribe to people? Or are we going to have to find doctors who are that's all they prescribe? You can go to California and go to one of those cannabis doctors and be like, oh, my neck hurts here on Wednesdays. And then my spine, I have spina bifida. And so I need medical marijuana, and the guy can prescribe you medical marijuana. I mean, a medical card, right? So are medical doctors here willing to be, that's going to be an option now instead of oxys?
Well, from what I understand, there are some doctors that do support.
Yeah.
I don't know them by name. But
we
there
don't
is
need
some
names.
support.
We don't like names.
Right. Right. But there is some support in the medical community for it. And I guess when the program launches, people will know which doctors are in support of it. And I think it's just, again, a matter of research and training. And they want to just make sure that it's going to be beneficial to their patients that they recommend to the program. And if they're unsure, then they're not going to recommend it.
Does Grassroots Guam spearhead the research that's being done here on Guam for medical marijuana?
No, we just read about it as much as we can, and we've gone to meet with people, and we've taken tours of dispensaries stateside, and have met with people in the industry, and we just basically networked on our own to learn. We are interested in applying for a license, and we've been open about that from the very beginning. But we don't take a position where we advocate ourselves over anybody else. We want to just push the process along to make sure that it's a fair process, and that the number one thing that we advocate for is safe patient access. And we want to make sure that patients are safe, but they can get it, when they need it and how they need it. Whether they eat it or drink it or vape it or put it in tea or, put it in cookies or chocolate or, apparently the latest, greatest thing is suppositories.
Ooh.
So
Wow.
they're saying if you have pain, if you have chronic pain, suppositories are it in the cannabis industry right now. So
you want to take a hit of my suppository? Oh, sorry. I just I can't share this one with you, but we can definitely. I'll give you one. You owe me one, huh? You owe me one.
Oh man,
that's pretty good.
Well, I've never actually done that before.
Yeah.
But yes.
I guess we're just gonna have to try it out.
Private.
So you want to get high tonight? I got some suppositories, and we're just gonna watch movies, but see, the thing is,
Suppositories
suppositories and chill. But
that would be interesting.
You have to watch me put it up my butt, and I have to watch you put it up your butt.
You first, though.
You first.
Oh, this is your first time doing it. I'm not sure if you'll feel a thing, but I mean, I heard it's safe nowadays.
Make sure it's cold. I like mine frozen.
Well, I don't think I'd want it any other way,
Well, that escalated quickly. Where's those gummy bears?
Mambu, do you have?
I think we've definitely hit it.
market.
And you know what, Andrea, it was very informational. It was very fun talking to you.
Yeah.
I felt like you were open with us, and that's what people need. People need to hear openness about an issue like this. If we want to move forward in anything, we have to be open. We have to be able to talk about it. We have to be able to discuss it with each other without getting mad, without saying, no, you know what? I'm not going to deal with this. I'm out of here. Keeping an open mind.
Without trying to take each other's suppositories.
Hey, did you see my suppository?
Can I thank Playhouse Studios?
Yeah, you can.
We're gonna get to that. Yeah,
we're here on a Sunday, chilling and talking about suppositories over at Playhouse Studios. So I want to thank my friend Rachel for having us. We're talking suppositories and eating some Vaughn's chicken and having a good time on this Sunday. But yeah, so thanks to Playhouse Studios. They've been supportive of the cause. And thanks to GTA for providing our very fantastic. Right, GTA is fantastic. Come and say hi, Ray.
You guys for free. I hope they're giving to you guys that for free.
Yeah.
I hope so. Yeah. Cool. That's great. Hey,
because we're looking for free internet.
Yeah, we are. Yeah, we are.
I told them what was up, and they were like, "Okay, we'll help you out. Like, try it out. I hope you upgrade." And I think I might actually. I like this.
Oh yeah, we recommend the fastest internet.
Yeah, when you've got to send big files out, the reliable internet. Yeah.
Are these shameless plugs right now? Are we shameless plugging right now?
That was actually because I also work in video, so I know what it's like when you're trying to get a 300 meg file out to the news stations, and it's like 4:45, 5 minutes to deadline, so.
Yeah, it's going to get there after 5. But we want to thank, honestly, thanks from us. Thanks to Playhouse Studios, because you have good audio, and the podcast listeners, what we do is we export the audio, and we push it to everybody's phones or their podcast players. So we export the audio from this podcast. So people who are not tuning in now and not listening now, they'll be able to listen to it later on their iPhone or their Android. Yeah, tomorrow we get it on there for them. So we want to thank I want to thank Playhouse Studio because the sound quality is excellent.
It is. You sound wonderful coming from that end.
You know what they're doing. Right on. But thanks so much too. Thanks for joining us. Is there anything else you want to add?
Can you tell everybody how they can support the initiative, how they can support Grassroots Guam, how they can join Grassroots Guam,
how can they get involved,
how they can get involved with Women for Grow Guam? Go ahead. Table's yours.
You know what? We're on Facebook right now, Grassroots Guam, and that's mainly an educational site. But you're going to start to see us a little bit more reaching out for support. I've just recently got appointed to Women Grow, so I'm still trying to figure out how we're going to go about that. But we're also on Facebook. Message us there, email us. Everything's there. Just check us out on Facebook. We really need to hear from the community. I mean, everything that we talk about, we're hoping that we're in line with what the community wants. But the only way for us to know for sure is for the community to come and speak to us about it. So don't be afraid. Email us, message us, post on our page, whatever you want to do. But we're waiting to hear from everybody.
Yep. All you got to do is join the conversation, right? That's what's up.
That's what's up.
All right. Thank you very much, everyone who's listened.
Yes, thank you for listening and joining us for sure.
Yep. Thank you so much.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, no problem. Thank you for taking a little bit of your time on a Sunday to hang out with us and talk a little bit of cannabis. And I'll be sure to use cannabis whenever we're talking about marijuana instead. I really believe that's where it's going to start for me, at least. But thank you guys so much. Catch us on Instagram, master_random, on Twitter, masterrandom.gu. Go to masterrandom.com to check out all the podcasts. We're still working on the new webpage. It's coming up. Stay tuned. Boo, you want to say your shout outs or your goodbyes to the listeners? Thanks, Steve.
Thank you, everybody, for listening. It's in order for us to move forward, we need to be aware. We have to be educated, and we have to have an open mind, whether you agree with it or not. And that's all I gotta say. And yeah, check us out next week for Master Random Live. We have a guest. We're gonna be putting you up on our social media soon. So look out for that. It's gonna be great. And that's all I got. Thank you very much. I love you guys. Thank you for listening.
See you later. Peace.